All right, so hello everybody. So this is going to be the review that was given out on Tuesday, April 9th. Okay, this was the two-part review. If you guys remember correctly, this is the first paper review that you got. It looked something like this, okay, and it was 6 pages front and back. I gave it to you guys on Tuesday. I told you it was due by the end of class on Wednesday. So if you get a chance to and you subscribe to my video, then you will know that this is coming up and that I posted a video Tuesday night. So hopefully you guys will be able to get some of the answers instead of trying to figure everything out on your own. Now, the key for this video is to understand what we're shooting for here. And what we're shooting for is for an understanding of what it takes to actually pass the AzMerit or to get highly proficient or even proficient. What you have to do is understand context of questions, and then you have to think, how would you do it outside the box or inside the box? In terms of, like, if you see in a question that talks about a word problem, like we're going to talk about in a bit here, you would want to make sure you take it and go outside the box with how you answer it. Okay, so a system of equations, like for example, you don't have to solve and set each one up on top of each other and use the old school math way. You would set them up and then put them in Desmos and plug them. There's also a different way to answer some of these questions. So let's begin. First one here, restaurant jars. A cook uses 2 jars from 1 box. How would you actually relate that? The answer is C. Next expression right here. So I'm going to go through these kind of quick. You just want to make sure you guys write stuff down as you go along. How would you find out which expression is equivalent? Well, you would just distribute. Okay, when you distribute it out, first thing you should know that it's a negative. So I do know that this one and this one aren't legit because it's not a negative in the front. Then the back is positive. Negative and the negative is actually positive, so the answer is G. Did I have to do any math? No, I did not. I just looked at the signs. Next, number 3, which one has no solutions? No solution is parallel lines, okay? So, and I'm not going to be able to spell this right. I think that's right. Parallel lines, that. All the rest of these have one solution because of the intersection. So, like for example, when we do the system of equations, and you guys graph something like that, usually the answer is the intersection, just as a tidbit later on. Which statement about the graph is true? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you need to graph this. So what you would want to do is graph this in Desmos and then read the graph, okay? The answer to this would be, when you read the graph, it's going to come up and the answer is going to be G. The reason for that is graph it in Desmos and find out. Now, an asymptote is actually, we talked very briefly about it in our class, but an asymptote, just so you guys are fully aware of the future, when you graph something like this, okay, and on our graph it comes down and it curves, and then it goes like this, and it stays right with the 0. It never actually crosses. What it is, asymptote is an imaginary line that this graph never crosses. So in this example, it is y equals 0. So it is not the case. But I just want to make sure you guys understood what an asymptote is. That is a horizontal one, where it's an imaginary dotted line that would go along the axis. There is a y one as well, where wherever the line curve will go up to, that's called a vertical asymptote. That is something you learn in Algebra 2, but that's what that word means. All right, number 4, graph it. Okay, one aspect to remember when you graph these things is to make sure that you understand that it is dx and ry. Okay, remember dx, ry. Domain is the x, which is left to right. R is the range, which is y's, which are up and down. Okay, so dx, ry. So if I'm going for the range, right away, a and b are gone. Then if you graph it, you'll know that the only thing it can be is a 4, where it arches up and it stops at 4 going down. Okay, so understand that process as well. Next, expression. If you do not know how to solve this, ladies and gentlemen, take the number, go into Desmos or a calculator, and put 144 to the power of 1/2. And if you do that, you will get the answer of 12. So how did we go from 144 to 12? Did we divide it by 2? No, we took the square root. So if I had taken the square root of this and I understand exponentially speaking that I get rid of these two, and these are my only two answers left, logically speaking, F is the only one left, because you still have to take half of a K, 2, and half of K, R to the 14. Number 7. Well, these are out of order, as you guys can tell. I've kind of had to put a hodgepodge of things. You would graph this in Desmos, and then compare the graph, okay? When you graph it, you would see that C is the answer. It's not how you get the answer, okay? It's not from you to know, oh, okay, it's C, let's move on. It's make sure you understand, to get this, you graph it. 6, what value of n makes the equation? Now, my very third hour from the lovely Miss Lena actually came up with how do you solve this. Usually you can go in Desmos, but I'm pretty sure during the AzMerit it's going to be deactivated. So Lena brought up, just plug in the answers. So you would plug in a 3 here, okay? Make sure you guys understand the concept of what we're talking about here. You plug in the answers. So you can go one of two ways. You can put it in Desmos and go to equal signs like this, and then what you would do is you would just plug in a number 3, or you cut these equations in 2. So you put this on one line of Desmos, and then you do the other one right here, and replace each values until they equal the same number. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, it is G. So if you plugged in a -9 here, -9 here, and here, both sides of the equation should be the same number. That is how you solve that. That is the easiest and fastest. If you want to distribute, to go forward you can, okay? Because 4 times 0.5n is 2, so it technically would be 2n, and then that would be -12 equals n minus, and then that's 0.25 times 12 is like -3, and you get the gist, okay? So understand the concepts, and can you multiply it out? Yes. If you feel like doing that, you can. And I would still get the same answer of -9. Number 8, a sequence of numbers is below. So here's where a lot of you struggle, the sequence. This is the sequence here, a to the n. But what it's saying is that it wants you to take an equation. For example, a to the 4th. If I take a to the 4th, what you're doing is instead of saying a to the n equals this, you're going to take this number 4 and you're going to plug it in to the n value. And then whatever your answer is should be 6. So if I plug a 4 in here, I'm going to get a number that's way too big. Same with this. So I'm stuck with these two. So if I'm just going to give you the answer right now, it'd be 6 times 4 minus 18. It's 24 minus 18, which equals 6. So if a to the 4th is 6, then, ladies and gentlemen, C is my answer. If I were to go to the next one, 5, I plug a 5 in here. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 minus 18 is, in fact, 12. So it was legit. It works out. All right, next. One aspect of this is understanding the ratio setup. Okay, where you have 21 on top, which is technically also the rate of change. The y2 minus y1. Over x2 minus x1. All right, a ratio setup is also 3. So it would be 105 over x. We don't know what x is. This, ladies and gentlemen, 21 divided by 3, the change on here would be 7 if I were to do rate of change. It'd be 7. So what you do is you take 7 divided by 105, and in fact you would get 15. Common sense says that I actually would go, if I'm going up in value, that my x value is probably going up as well. So you should know that A and B are completely garbage to begin with. All right, so once again, test-taking strategies. This expression here, it's the AC value. So it's -60 on top because that's the C value. And the B's on the bottom. So what two numbers multiply together to make -60? When you add them, make -17. It is, in fact, these two numbers, which is A. 12, zookeeper, blah, 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 blah. It's great. All this information is beautiful, lovely. Who cares? Because it's right here. Predict, using this scatter plot, what is the amount of food given at 25 weeks? Well, if I'm looking at this line, understanding it's at 20, if I'm going down to 25 and at 20 it's about 8, I'd say a little bit about 8. So knowing that, okay, it can't be 8.5. And it can't be 10. So I'm at 6 and 2.5. So if I'm at 25 weeks, which is right around here, you've got to know that it's starting to decrease, but not at such a fast rate that it's 2.5. So the obvious answer is G, or 6. It could have taken me 4 minutes to read all this. Sometimes you just need to skip and kind of see what the bottom is here, and then go back up and say, oh, okay, here's the plot. I mean, read it, it's 6, okay? Logically speaking, go through it as well. 13, range and domain. If I were to graph this, and when I say graph it, I mean, you just put f of x. I wonder if it'll do it if I just drop it straight in there. So you want to do y equals, or f of x, negative 37. What happens with this? If I zoom out on here, it creates a straight line at 37. So what is my domain? My domain is all real numbers, and there is no restriction on it. So the first two are gone. So I got all real numbers, or C and D. Range. Well, my range, according to this graph, is one number, 37. Simple enough. It may look weird, but once you graph it, the picture comes into play. 14, plot it out. So it's going to be 12, write your equation. It'll be 12 equals 14x, because $12, 14 postcards, and 5 large envelopes. The other equation would be 24.8 equals 10x plus 15y. How do you solve that? You plug that bad boy in Desmos, ladies and gentlemen, and you get your answers. So if I go accordingly here, it's going to be 12. This will be the only one I kind of show you guys the setup. Everything else, I'll try to see if I can remember the answers as we went through. So there's one equation. Then the other one is 24.8 equals 10x plus 15y. Is that right? 15? Yep. And your answer is going to come up to be, here's a plot. I can't see it because I'm too zoomed out. My intersection is right there. So my x value is 35 cents. My y is 142. And if I remember correctly, my y is the large envelopes. I want to know the cost of a large envelope is in fact 142. All right, so make sure you guys know the difference between them. 15, it's kind of common sense. What does the y-intercept of this graph mean? What does this mean right here? Well, it doesn't mean the water level increases. That's the rate of change. Maximum was 19.5. No, that's kind of the maximum point. Initial level is 16. Yes. Water level was measured for 14 days. That is true as well. Went from 0 to 14, but that's not why we care. We don't care about the line. We want to know the starting point. 16. There are 1,224. This is exponential decay. If you guys look up on the star setup that I gave you, it should have this equation written down for you, which is in fact, it's y equals a, and then it is 1 minus r with a little t here. So my initial amount is 1,024. They all have it. And then it's going to say each round half the people leave. Half of the players are eliminated. Which function is used best to tell the remaining rounds? Well, if half are gone, the rate is 50%. So it's subtraction. So I know it can't be this one, and I know it can't be that one. And so if I'm doing the subtraction correctly, you know each and every time it's going to be B, because that's 50%. Okay, this annotates 5%. So that would be a huge number. That would actually be 95%, because it would be 1 minus 0.95 equals 0.08 or 0.05. So technically speaking, that's 95. That's not even close. They're just putting that number in there to try to trick you. Next, as we move along, this will be the last page I do for this review. I'll stop and do part 2 in a second. Which statement about g of x equals x squared minus 576 is true? So what you would want to do when you do this, ladies and gentlemen, would be just to graph it in Desmos. Okay, so when we set this up, it'd be x squared. Then you would want to know, let's see, because it talks about the zeros. So it would be x squared minus, so let me turn this off. It's going to be x squared minus 576. Okay, so if I go 576, I know if I then, because I can't see anything, if I zoom out, I know my x's are 24 and negative 24. So now we can know the zeros. 2008 can be found. Nope, that's not it. The zeros, 28, no. The zeros of 24, negative 24, and 24 are correct. The only zero, no. So by plotting it out, we get the answer right away. Okay, it's not that difficult. Just make sure you guys do it. Which graph represents the solution set? Same thing. Okay, make sure you guys know what the setup is and just put it in Desmos. Now, I know that this equals to is a solid line. So I know that this one are garbage and so is this one. So the question then becomes, which one do we do? So it is negative 4x. So let's make sure I can do this in my head. Negative 4x, and then it's this one. And then it's going to be 6y and minus 54. Minus 54. Let's go home. Kind of see, zoom out one more time. It crosses at 9 and about 13 and a half. So if I look on this paper here, I got 2, 4, 6, 8, about 9 and a half. And I got 2, 4, 6, 8, and I'm only going at what? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So if my bottom number here is 13 and a half, I know, ladies and gentlemen, that it cannot be this one. A has to be the answer. So just put it in and figure it out from there, okay? This number 19. Given this equation, what is the value of 16? There are two ways of doing this. The easiest one would be to put this in Desmos. So you guys, or your graphing calculator. So it'd be 1 divided by 3. Then you do your basic math. So it'd be 2 minus, and it said what value did I want to put in there? Or 4 minus. So I'll change that. 4 minus 16. So it's going to be 4 minus 16. And then that number is, of course, squared. 48. So I'm just plugging in the values because remember, it talks about what is instead of f of x. If you're replacing x with 16, then your number here is going to be 48. That's what f of x means. 20, the graph shows a linear relationship between the maximum area of a square that can be painted. What number best represents a rate for the number of gallons with respect to the number of gallons being painted? So what I want to know is, if there's 1 gallon of paint being used, how many square feet can it be done? So the answer to this would be 400 square feet per gallon. That is the answer. Okay? Understand what we're looking for here. For every 1 gallon, it covers 400 square feet. At 2 gallons, it's 800, blah, blah, blah. You guys get it. All right, 21. What are the solutions of this equation? You could multiply it out, or you could just please use Desmos. So that's x plus 7 squared. All right, x plus 7 squared equals 81. Easiest. Your answers then are negative 16 and 2. So I go in here, negative 16 and 2. Simple as that, okay? There is supposed to be a trick to this where you're supposed to multiply it out. You ain't got time for that, okay? We don't have time for you guys to bring the 81 over, factor it out, FOIL it out, move everything around. Nope, we ain't got time for that, okay? Take care of it this way first. What appears to be the domain for this part of this function of the exponential graph? Now, let me make sure that this is not cut off because I think it is. It is. Okay, so ignore everything else now that I screwed this all up on this side. What appears to be the domain of this exponential function? So the domain, remember, is dx. Okay, so starting on the left and the x values going this way until it gets to this line right here. That is in fact the domain. So I'm going from -1 to 3. So my domain is -1 to 3, and it's always the x. This one and the y are not legit. Hopefully you guys understand that. Now, if I were to ask what would be the range would actually be this value right here, where it'd be -5.3 going vertically speaking to 27. All right, this is the range. So please make sure you guys understand and get that. I can't stress enough the importance of that. 20, whatever number this is supposed to be in between 23. Tables, linear points. Says graph, this ordered pair represents some points of graphs on lines Q and V. Which system of equations is represented by Q and V? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you of course would need to graph these on decimals. Now, the trick with these would be understanding that this process might take a little bit, okay? I don't personally know the answer off the top of my head on this one because I haven't done this one in class yet. But let me show you the setup, and then you guys find the answer. So you would just plug in, all right, 21. If it's the first one, that's awesome. I hope it is. So I'm going to go 21x minus y equals 9. Ooh, the good news is it looks like these two are the same. And then, so 21x minus y equals 9. So I got that equals 9. And then the second equation is going to be, sorry, I was staring at that for a second, 5x plus 6y. So this is going to be 5x plus 6y, and it equals 40. Now here's the first one, equals 40. Okay, so here's my setup. So I have two. So it's asking what are some points. Table of pairs, some points on the graphs of the lines. Okay, so line Q would be represented with a 0 or, so it'd be 0, -9. The question is that do I have a 0, -9 on here? Ooh, I do. Okay, so let me make sure. -3, 18. Holy cow. If I go -3, then it's saying, which way is it going? Positive 18? Yeah, that's not right. Nope, that can't be it. So hopefully you guys understand why. So do I need to go any further? No, this is not the right one. So my assumption then would be, is if I do this again, because it's -3 over 18. If I go over -3, all of my numbers here are negative. Okay, so I do know that F and H are eliminated. So you guys try those two and see if you can figure out which one it is. If you do, then you'll know. So you guys get the drift. Compare the points, make sure that they're legitimate. Which situation does not show causation? I hate these problems, and I know you guys as well do, okay? Which situation does not show causation? When the student population of the school increases, the number of teachers of the school increases. All right, that is a cause. When the amount of sugar in a quart of apple juice is reduced, there are fewer calories in each serving. When there is more workers on a project, the project is completed in less time. When there is more protein in the athlete's diet, the athlete scores more points in a game. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this would be true. So that does show causation. This would be true because usually if you take out the sugar, you would have reduced calories. So it's more workers on a project, it's completed in less time. When there's more protein in the athlete's diet, the athlete scores more points in the game. Which one of these does not show causation? It's D, because that's weird and stupid. Okay? I can eat as much protein as I want, but is that going to make me score more points in the game? No, it's not. Okay? So that's it for this first section. What I'll do is I'll pause the video. I will load up part 2. In the meantime, keep working. If you're watching this tonight on Tuesday, if you're watching this afterwards, use this video as a study guide to fill in the blanks.